Hello, Professor. I'll be presenting to you United Airlines' response to two crises. Um, as an outline, I'll be going into the forced removal of a United passenger. I'll explain the crisis. I'll explain United's response and the world's response, the outcome of the situation, and an analysis of United's response. And then I'll go into another crisis, which is the death of a dog in a United baggage compartment. I'll explain the crisis, the response of the world and of United, go into analysis, and then have a conclusion. So the first crisis occurred on United Airlines Flight 3411 on April 9th, 2017. An American Vietnamese doctor named David Dow was forcibly removed from his seat. The flight was overbooked, but he refused to give up his seat to get off the plane and get on another flight. And so two safety officers were called in and forcibly removed him, in the process hitting his head against several objects. Dow sustained multiple injuries, including a concussion, broken nose, and broken teeth, and he had his sinuses ruptured in the process. The other passengers on the plane were able to take pictures, obviously these ones here, and videos of the incident, which were later posted to social media and many other outlets. And those pictures and videos immediately blew up, and the whole world knew about the crisis overnight. So as far as the response goes, the morning after, CEO Munoz, the CEO of United Airlines, issued an apology. He apologized for having to reaccommodate 4 passengers, including Dow. The other 3 were willing to get off the plane, but Dow was not. But he never mentioned any type of brutality or any apology to the other passengers to having to witness such brutality. But he later made an internal letter to his employees, which was made public. Munoz commended the actions of the staff for removing Dow. He described him as being belligerent and as disruptive, and so he was basically congratulating them on their actions. And so obviously the world was enraged by that after seeing how Dow had been treated. So like I just said, the incident and specifically the internal response led to outrage and calls of boycott of United. The Chinese market, or the Asian market would be a better way to say it, especially calls for boycott. The Chinese specifically, but Vietnam also called for a boycott, and because those countries believed that the removal was racially based, because there were other passengers that could have gotten off that flight, but they chose to pick on Dow. United reiterated an apology, but they never really said that they were in the wrong, so it wasn't really an unequivocal apology. As far as an outcome goes, United changed their policy within the next few days following the incident. They no longer will remove people who have already been seated, even if the flight is overbooked. But even with that, 2 surveys were done, and over 40% of millennials stated that they would no longer fly with United in both of those surveys. United stocks plummeted, they rebounded, but at first they dropped $1.4 billion. You can see this drop here, pretty drastic. And like I said, the next day after his second apology, they rebounded, but they were still down $250 million from where they were the preceding days. As far as an analysis of the situation, United certainly did not give a sincere enough apology fast enough or take responsibility immediately. Munoz gave a generic response, and he explained their side, explaining how they had done the right thing and were not in the wrong. And so obviously that's not an apology without equivocation. The internal letter that he sent out definitely worsened the situation, because it essentially ridiculed the beaten passenger, as well as displayed barely concealed contempt for all passengers. So if he had just stated that he thought that Dow had been disruptive, that maybe wouldn't have been such a bad thing. But he said things about all passengers, and so there was a worldwide response to that and a drastic drop in United flight passengers. United had to be sued. They didn't immediately settle with the customer, and so the lawsuit obviously brought more attention to the situation. Eventually, they did fix the problem with the policy stating that attendants cannot remove already seated passengers, even in an overbooked flight. But the bottom line is that United recovered from this. Customers pretty much forgot. They came back eventually. The company survived. Obviously, they're still around today, and their stock recovered. But as far as their response goes, it was not effective. But their company, with their size, were able to weather it and just wait for the overall response of the people to decline until they came back to fly with them. The second crisis was a woman paid for a dog to fly with her and her family on a flight. She paid the necessary $125 to carry on her dog. She had a soft carry-on case that would fit beneath the seat in front of her, and that is typically what would happen. They would just put the dog underneath the seat in front, and the soft case would just fold so that it could fit. But a flight attendant on the flight required that the dog be put into an overhead bin, and the woman complied after some rebuttal. But en route, the dog died, believed to have suffocated, and once the plane landed and the woman opened the baggage compartment and found her dog had died, she grabbed it and sat in the aisle and cried. At which point in time, passengers, took pictures. They stated that they were shocked in interviews, and those pictures were shared on social media. And the regular media shared the story. TMZ did a report, and so this just went everywhere between celebrities and the rest of the world alike. So obviously, based on that, the public was alarmed. And United immediately apologizes. They took responsibility in this formal announcement. Maggie Schmerin, a spokesperson for United, states, "We assume full responsibility for this tragedy and express our deepest condolences to the family and are committed to supporting them." They couldn't change the policy because it already stated that pets are not to be in an overhead bin. So it was realistically just the stewardess's fault for not knowing that policy. But bottom line, it blew back on United. But they already had that policy in place. They did begin working with the Humane Society and reviewed the handling of dogs in their stowage cargo holds that they typically bring dogs in, but the carry-on pet policy was not changed because there was already policy in place. Witnesses said that the flight attendant appeared distraught after finding that the dog had died, which undoubtedly helped calm the situation, knowing that she was sorry. United reached a settlement for the family immediately, and there was no major stock or passenger drop. So as far as an analysis goes of this crisis, United quickly apologized and settled with the family. They investigated the situation quickly. They issued a formal response quickly. They accepted full responsibility for the situation, and they apologized without equivocation. They couldn't fix much because there was already a policy in place, but they did enforce its policy with attendants and went over it again with all their employees. And so there was no major impact on the company's bottom line. So overall, their response was effective. In conclusion, as far as the Dow crisis goes, definitely an ineffective response. They were not very fast and they were not very sincere. And so they lost customers and they lost value. As I said earlier, because of the size of the company, they were able to recover, but they definitely took a pretty hard hit for that one. With the dog crisis, they had an effective apology and settlement. They apologized immediately and they took responsibility for it. For a short time, they lost dog owners' trust, and so they saw some dog owners saying that they weren't going to fly with United, but overall there was no major income change as far as stocks or passengers go. These are my sources for the presentation, and that concludes it.